Okay, good morning, everyone. Are we ready to change the world? We are going to. There's Hashem. This is not really a speech. This is going to be a workshop, and we're going to unveil a new initiative that nobody knows about, not even Project Inspire. And I hope this is going to be the next big thing. Okay, we'll build it up properly. And I'm glad you decided to come here because you're going to get in at the very ground floor of something that hopefully will be a game changer. They broke up this session into a few different topics. We've got inspire yourself, inspire your family, inspire Klal Yisrael. I hope that doesn't mean that I don't know how to inspire my family or myself. But I think that perhaps they chose inspire Klal Yisrael because I am what they call, quote-unquote, a kiruv professional. I reject that term. I reject it simply because I never went to school for kiruv. I never went to classes. I didn't even go to Ner La'ela for one of those kind of programs that teach you kiruv. You're a professional if you care, and then as you do it more and more, you learn what works for you and what doesn't work, and that's really what a kiruv professional is. So it's a misnomer. I just don't think it's that accurate. Even so, nowadays I do get paid for doing kiruv, and my primary job is doing kiruv on college campuses. My job is I'm the national director for college outreach in North America. So primarily what I do is I travel from city to city each week, and I meet the rabbis at each college, and that's what I do. I try to train in the rabbis, get them inspired. I usually have a chance to speak to their students, inspire their students, and that's pretty much my life. My wife is a real tzaddikus. You may know, if any of your old Borough Park Flatbush people, my wife is a Juravel. If you heard of Tina Juravel or Tova Juravel or Rabbi Juravel from the books and tapes, that's my father-in-law. That's my father-in-law. So yeah, she's a big tzaddikus, right? So that's the family that I come from, and my parents are Klatzkos from Cleveland, also Eisenman, if you know any of the Eisenmans from Baltimore, Laniato Hospital, and included in that is Elias, Bodenheimer, and Grunfeld, which is all the Yekisha side of my family. I didn't start off as a kiruv professional, quote unquote. I actually was in Koil for 10 years, and while I was in Koil, I also had a shul. I had a shul on Shabbos in Borough Park for 7 years, and in Perth Amboy, New Jersey, you know that shul that's in the news? I don't know if you've seen the news. That was my shul, the shul that they're selling, and there's a group that wants to buy it, and there's a big milchama. That was the shul that I was a rav in for many years. There's something that happened, which I'm going to be telling you about in this talk, and that event made me rethink what I'm doing with my days here on earth. And I left the Rabbanus, and I left it pretty cold. And I enjoyed being a Rav. I enjoyed learning. I mean, I learned how to do Milah and Safras and all of the things. We built a mikveh and Eruv, Chevra Kadisha. We did it all. But at the end of the day, people, moving them from point A to point B to point C, from fry to from uninspired to inspired, I didn't feel like at least the Rabbanus that I had was doing that for me. And so I left and I moved to California. And we moved on to a college campus called UCLA. And I was there for many years. UCLA, I was the rabbi over there. I was called Rabbi K. And for many years, even the Gedolim that I would meet, they'd say, "Oh, Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi K." Like, no, that was for my students. We're supposed to call me that. I'm just Ben Sian. But then what happened was, there was a young rabbi in the University of Maryland, whose name is Koretsky, and he started going around with Rabbi K as well. So then it became a little bit more complicated. And then to make it even more complicated, one of my rabbis in Temple, his name was Rabbi K, K-A-Y. And he started going as Rabbi K. So I just said, that's it. We'll be Ben Sion Klatzko, and that's it. And for many years, about 7 years, I lived on a college campus. I brought up a mishpacha there. And Baruch Hashem, I have 11 children, K'nai Nahar. And about 6 years ago, I had the opportunity to move back to Muncie and take over the national position. And I'm just giving you this bio because I want to, when I unveil what I'm about to unveil, you have to know where I'm coming from. So we've been living for 6 years in Muncie, New York. A lot of people sort of thought doing kiruv in Muncie is impossible, like who's coming to Muncie? Outside of RCC, which is a little community college, where are you going to do kiruv? The truth is, we're doing more kiruv in Muncie than we even did on a college campus, because there's really nothing there. So I have a 50-mile radius at my disposal. I've got Rage coming. I got Emmett coming this week. I had a group from Montreal. Next week I have a group from LA that's actually flying in to join me. And there's plenty of kiruv to be done if you just open your eyes and you want to do it. The last thing that I would tell you, and I think this is why they gave me this particular position, is because a number of years ago I began the website Shabbat.com, and that's the papers that I gave you. Shabbat.com began as a thought in the middle of Shemona Esrei and Satmar. Sorry about that, but that's, you know, all the best ideas. And I'm just thinking, you know, wouldn't it be great? Actually, the evolution was that we have a lot of guests for Shabbos. Usually between 50 and 100 guests each week. My wife is a big tzaddikus. Again, I take no credit for it. I'm just the ringleader. And people would always say in the community, why don't you send us some of your people? Now, come on. You know, they came to me, oh, even though you asked to come to me, let me send you to the Grossmans. So it's uncomfortable, and it's a little bit of a hassle, to tell you the truth, to start setting people up and a bait and switch. So I said, what if I just gave you a register that you could list yourself as hosts? So we started that. Actually, when I originally thought of the idea, I had no money to start it, because the website, we put almost $400,000 into it, and we're coming out with a 3.0 version in a few months. It's going to blow everything that you, for those of you that are on the site, it's going to be the most delicious thing you've ever seen. It'll just push chesed in a way that no one's ever seen before. But we're waiting for that to happen. But I didn't have any money to, you know, I'm in kiruv. You know, the kiruv doesn't pay all that much. So at that time, we had a fire in the house. Erev Pesach. And, you know, that happens. You know, everyone came over to me with the funny joke. Hey, I guess he did Bir Chametz. Bir Chametz. Like, that's the first time I heard that one. Everyone's coming over. Bir Chametz. So eventually, so it was a week before Pesach, we had nowhere to go for Pesach. We call up Travelers Insurance, and we tell travelers, you know, we need a proper accommodations for Pesach. They said, okay, we'll put you up in the Holiday Inn, $79 a night. I said, no, you're not understanding. Like, we need a Seder, we need a community, we need a Pesach hotel. So they said, sure, how much is that going to be? They said, $20,000 for 8 days. So they nearly laughed themselves off of the phone, which I didn't appreciate. So I called in the big guns. We called Chaim David Zwiebel, and Chaim, who is one of the heads of the Aguda, calls up Travelers and says, listen, one of our constituents, they're in trouble. They have a large family. Their house just burnt down. We hope you will show them all the necessary accommodations that they need. Show them that courtesy. They are members of Travelers. And if you can't, we will just have to tell our close to 1 million members to leave Travelers. So 4 minutes later, we get this very friendly phone call from Travelers. You know what? We had a change of heart, never mentioning the phone call that they got. We had a change of heart. We're okay with you going to a Pesach hotel. So now we actually have to find a hotel that would take us last minute. And most hotels were booked, and we needed rooms that were close to each other, you know, with all the kids. So we found a hotel, Rabbi Portnoy from Queens, and he said, you're welcome to come, but I'd like you to speak 4 times. If you agree to speak 4 times, I guess we'll be able to have another speaker. They had speakers, but another speaker, then we'll shuffle things around. I said, sure. And we had the most amazing Pesach. The food was amazing. The food was absolutely amazing, and everything else was okay as well. A lot of ruchnias, a lot of gashmias. I had never even thought of going to a hotel for Pesach, and it was a beautiful experience. After Pesach, I get a phone call from Chaim Samson, Rabbi Chaim Samson, and he says, listen, I heard you speak. I'd love you to speak for Project Inspire. And I said, sure. So I spoke that Motzei Shabbos, but it was during that week that I had thought of the idea of Shabbat.com, which originally was called, anyone know what it used to be called? See you on Shabbos. So originally we called it See you on Shabbos. So I announced at the Project Inspire, wouldn't it be amazing if every single person who wants to have guests were able to open their home, and every single person who needs a place would be able to find a place. So right after I gave the talk, a young man by the name of Lavi Needleman, or Lee Needleman, who lives in Muncie, came rushing up to the front, and I said, anyone who wants to help me with this? I have the idea, I'll implement it, but I need help. Lavi came running over to me and said, Rabbi, I'll be your fundraiser. You can't even pay for stuff like that. I'll be your fundraiser? Are you kidding me? So that's how we got it off the ground. And here we are a few years later, and 6,000 people a week get invited for Shabbos. 6,000. That means each month more than Madison Square Garden. Shekayach. For those of you that are on the site and don't see the action, and the 3.0 you're going to start seeing, it's built in. You're going to be able to see everything that's going on in your community, who just got invited, who's looking for a shidduch, who needs a place, who just signed up. We're going to have a news stream, which doesn't exist on the current site. So we're going to push Orchim forward. You're going to be able to see that. So that told me that when you come to Project Inspire, you have this amazing forum, amazing group of people that want to reach out and help. So that was the idea years ago. Here's the new idea. This is called Inspire Klal Yisrael. So what I'm going to say now, I don't think has ever been said in a public forum, particularly in a Project Inspire kind of a forum, and it has to be said. We are trying to be mechanech Klal Yisrael to run out and do kiruv. Now, I do kiruv all day. That's what I do for a living. I run and do kiruv. There is something that sabotages my kiruv, and there's something that will sabotage your kiruv. And not only does it sabotage it that when we try to be makarev people, they end up falling off the derech, or they don't come close, but even people who are on the derech now are rushing towards the exit. And I think we are all aware of this. I mean, I have a radio show, if you ever want to listen, see that Brute 97.5 FM every Monday, and we speak about real issues. And I take questions, and I take phone calls, and you have to hear that much of Klal Yisrael is in a lot of pain. There's a lot of pain. And part of the pain is that while we try to keep a positive outlook and put our best foot forward and just plaster a smile on our faces, the reality is we have a shidduchim crisis that's getting worse, we have a parnasa crisis that is worse and getting worse, and we have kids who are at risk and adults at risk and people who look on the outside but inside there's a lot of hollowness and there's a yearning and there are questions. And I've spoken recently in front of a number of very, very chashuv Hasidic crowds, and you cannot believe the questions that come to me after I speak. You won't believe it. And maybe in the back of our minds we begin to suspect, or we worry that maybe there's something that is rotting on the inside, and we're just trying to put a little more makeup on the outside to make it look presentable. I don't know if that's what you think, but there are times that I think that. And the truth of the matter is the following. Klal Yisrael is really in good shape. We're not in horrible shape. There are a lot of issues, but there's a lot that's going right. The only thing is, we never hear about it. It's not heard. It's not publicized. We don't have PR. It's very still. But what has PR? Negativity. And the negativity, whether it's through blogs, whether it is on television with people coming on and speaking about things, whether it is through videos on YouTube, there is this negativity that we're exposed to. And it's not just from the Freie Olam or from the anti-Haredi Olam, but even within the Frum Olam. We read, it used to be, if there was a scandal in Pinsk, you never heard about it in Minsk. Right? Each little city had its rotten apple, or its few rotten apples, and Nebuch, that's what it is. People have a Yitzhar, and that's how it is. But today, with the media the way it is, we can take one newspaper, one web page, and on it we can collate every tzara, every scandal, every sad deed that a frum person has done, and we can put it that it looks like a list, and each week we're exposed to this, and it depresses us, and it makes us question what's really going on. Do you agree with me? Okay, I listen, if I feel it, it's interesting because I spoke recently at Arnava, and I spoke about the internet, upcoming Sefira, and I spoke about the three major issues. And we spoke about the Bittul Zman, we spoke about pornography, and then I said the greatest issue of all, I believe, is the depression and the exposure to hashkafas that weaken us. And my wife turns to me and she says, come on, do you really think that's the big issue? Do you think that's the big issue? I said, there's no question to me. Pornography is terrible, and it makes a person feel schwach, and it makes a person feel depressed, but it is what it is. But hashkafas, they hit you from all sides, there's no escaping them, and it wears us away, it whittles us down. So, whether right or whether wrong, I gave my wife a brief 20-minute tour of the dark side of a computer. And I don't mean images, I'm talking about hashkafas. I said, I want to show you a few videos, and look how many people have seen them. Look at them. I want to show you a few websites that are devoted to destroying Yiddishkeit. Look at this. She said, till now, this was on Thursday. Thursday night she said, I couldn't sleep. Friday she said, I couldn't sleep. Last night she says, I'm so bothered. She said, you're so right. She said, I was exposed to it for 20 minutes and I felt a little something in my brain, My wife is as big a tzaddikas as you can find. Her whole life is devoted to Torah and Chesed. But like Rabbi Victor Miller Zatzal used to say, that if someone says to you the earth is square, on some level, it's going to make a roshim. Maybe there are mountains at the four corners, right? And if a lie is repeated again and again and again, the frum, they're not honest. The frum, they don't care about everyone else. The frum, they abuse their wives, or the women are degraded. The frum. Well, you know what happens? It's not just the fraya that we're trying to be makarev, who they come away from a Shabbaton expired. They run to Google. They do a few Google searches and forget about it. Everything that we just said has become batal mavutal. You know how many students I lost to this? I'm going to Eretz Yisrael in 2 weeks. I'm bringing 40 Freya students. We're staying in the old city. I plan on giving them the time of their lives. They're going to hear the best speakers imaginable. They're from Penn State. They're from Las Vegas. They're from Orlando. And you know what? I know exactly what's going to happen. They're going to come back on fire. They're going to sit in front of their computer, and they're going to be exposed to, yes, but Rabbi Klatzko didn't tell us about this, and he didn't tell us about that, and look at this, and another pedophile, and another this, and another abuse, and another scandal, and another embezzlement, and another, and everything that we say is going to go on. And that, right now, is our greatest danger. We, as a frum community, have not taken PR seriously. We haven't. It's like Israel. Israel for many years did not feel PR was necessary. They said, you know what? We have a right on our side. Anyone who doesn't have the seichel to know that throwing a bomb on a bunch of little children or blowing up a bus full of innocent civilians is a monsterly act. Anyone who doesn't know it, there's nothing that we could say to them. So Israel did not engage in PR, and guess what? They were wrong. Because the Palestinians did engage in PR, and like Goebbels Yamach Shemo from the Nazi regime said, a lie that's repeated enough times becomes the truth. That's what it is. And that's what's happening. What's happening is, we have ignored this. So on one hand, we're saying, go, give shalom to your neighbor, go and say shalom aleichem, and then all of our hard work is going to go down the drain because they have no resources. And the few videos that are out there that are supposed to be positive videos, I hate to say it, they're preachy. They're preachy. They don't show normal people. They show people preaching how great Torah is. So after much thought, I've been thinking about this for ages. I spoke to a few people. We're putting together an organization. And the organization starts right now. It's starting right now. Okay? I registered the web domain, Still the Light. We are still the light. We are still the light unto the nations. Regardless of what the media says, there's no nation that is involved in chesed like us. There's no nation that is as caring and as considerate. There's no nation that cares about life and dignity like us. There are none. And the world doesn't know it. And even the From community doesn't hear it. And what we need to do is we have to create a PR arm and spread the word in a professional way. We have to get SEO, search engine optimization, and get it at the top of Google. So when you Google From Yid, you won't get anti-Semitic and anti-From videos, but you'll get a wonderful couple or 10 couples that are interviewed, a husband and wife from Hasidish to Lakewood to whoever they are, looking at each other with achdus and with love, speaking about how each one is a partner in building something beautiful, speaking about themselves, not preaching to the camera, speaking about themselves. We have to have a video with a tour of all the gemachim out there. Let's do a tour of a wedding dress gemach with some amazing stories. Let's take a tour of the Satmar Bikkur Cholim. People don't know about what Satmar is going to show it. No, we're not going to show it. Let us at least show the world. I don't know what they're going to say in the Yisachtas, right? But even if, and I don't think this is the case, but even if they were to ban internet entirely, that's not going to make the world stop watching. That'll make the From hopefully listen to the Gedolim. But even so, we have to create this arm, and we're blind, deaf, and dumb if we think that it's going to happen on its own. The only thing that's happening is we're becoming more depressed. You know, the Rabbi Leaf got up and said, "Wow, such a big oilam." This is not a big oilam. Come on, this is a small oilam. Honestly. It's good, you're the Yechidim. This is not a big oilam. And the reason it's not a big oilam is because people are scared. I spoke to a From lady once, she said, I'm scared to do kiruv because they'll learn the truth. Whoa. This is a From lady. So we have to take PR seriously, right? We have to stand by the city gates. And we don't have to, not to preach, just say who we are. So anyone who would like in at the groundest of ground levels, at the very bottom, we could use help. I don't have a penny to start this. You could help financially. You could help if you know a video person, if you know couples who want to be interviewed. Take the back of the paper. I give you the front of the paper. You could be a host on the site Gewaldic. But the back of the paper, write how you can help out with this. The light still shines. We are still the light. We are the Orla Goyim. L'sakan oil b'malchus shakai means that the non-Jewish world, the Jewish world, the friar world, the From world has to know who we are and what we're doing. It's not good enough. We can't be behind times anymore. We can't. And I want to tell you that there is a group that did this very effectively, not a Jewish group. There's a group that did it. It's the Mormons. The Mormons actually did this exact thing, except that to me it lacked authenticity. So we could learn from that what to do, but I saw them. It was professional, but it was too slick. I want real. I want real. We don't have a falsha product to sell. You speak to any Yid. How many people here have ever said a curse word? How many people in this room have ever taken drugs? How many? We're Sharena people. We're so clean. We're so pure. We try so hard. The world just doesn't know it. Or the world only knows the scandals. Okay? So that is the missing component, in my opinion, in Kiruv. It's missing. If we don't have that component, we will not be able to do Kiruv effectively, and we're going to be spinning our wheels. We'll be building castles in the sand. It'll just keep collapsing. It's a big undertaking. Baruch Hashem, I have a sister in Baltimore. If you've ever seen her website, rivkamalka.com, she is a powerhouse. She is a new star on the horizon, and she began using videos effectively to teach women how to cover their hair, how to be proud of it. She's on board. She has her videographer. Anyone who could help out with any part, come join Higi Azman. Chaval that there aren't 10 times many people, because there would be 10 times many resources. Anything you could do, put it on the back, and whether it's financially, whether it's yourself, just to give yourself. Okay. They asked me to speak about how to inspire others. And they asked me actually on the right parsha. You see, and I have to keep an eye on the time. Are we over at 11:10? 11:15? Okay. This week's parsha is Achremus Kedoshim. Achremus Kedoshim was my brother's bar mitzvah parsha. And my brother, his name was Rabbi Klatzko, was nifter at the age of 28. He was a young man, an idealistic man, who changed the face of Johannesburg in a mere 2 years. He was living in Kiryat Sefer. He had been working part-time at Or Sameach. He was a Rochester Chafetz Chaim guy. He got very into the inspirational part of Yiddishkeit, how to reach out. He was amazing in Or Sameach. He was learning in Koil and part-time in Beis Yisrael, in Beit Vegan. And then he went to learn, then he went to Eretz Yisrael, and he was living in Kiryat Sefer, one of the first people to move in to Kiryat Sefer. Chaval, he wanted us to buy a house. We should have listened. And after living there for a few years and working part-time at Or Sameach said, listen, we love you to work full-time. You're so good with the kids. And he really didn't want to do that. He wanted to stay in learning. So they were opening up a koil in Johannesburg. So he said, I'll join. And he and his family moved to Johannesburg. They rented out their house. Within 24 hours, he was miyas at a shul. He was greeted at the airport. They heard Rabbi Klatzko is coming. Help us run a shul. Let us start a shul. It'll be for young people. And I guess he couldn't say no. And that shul became known as the Sunny Road Synagogue. In case you were ever in Johannesburg, you would know that the Sunny Road Synagogue is now one of the largest shuls in all of Johannesburg. There are many break-off shuls of the Sunny Road, and he was the one who started the Sunny Road Synagogue. And he lived there for 2 years, and he had young people in his community that he reached out to. And he had hundreds of people, and they loved their young rabbi. He was essentially the same age as they were, 26 years old when he started. And 2 years later, he was actually supposed to bring a group to Eretz Yisrael that week, a group of young students to learn about the Yiddishkeit. That Tuesday he was supposed to leave. Motzei Shabbos he went to sleep, and he never woke up. And it was an epic tragedy for many, many reasons. And his bar mitzvah parsha was Achremus Kedoshim, which is very appropriate because the Chasidish Torah Achremus Kedoshim Emor, after Kedoshim are nifter, Emor, people first begin to speak about his greatness. After he was nifter, his remains were brought to Eretz Yisrael, and you expected there to be, 100 people at the Levaya. 100, he wasn't even living in Eretz Yisrael then, so mishpacha and friends, right? 200 people? There were well over 1,000 people there with hours' notice. And Gedolim came to his Shiva. It was the most amazing thing. It was the most amazing thing. Ramosha Sternbach, the Kloisenberger Rebbe drove up. You can't imagine who came to this young man, and everyone's looking at these Gedolim. How did you know Gabriel? Why are you driving in? And it turns out he was quietly, secretly changing the world. And the stories about Gabriel are now the subject of a book by Art Scroll. Prozansky, he's got a whole chapter devoted to him called The Incredible Rav Gav. There are books, The Small Miracles, have stories about him. And every few days I meet another person who is a product of someone he was makarv. He was makarv hundreds and hundreds of people in 2 years. And what I want to do is I want to finish with a few stories about him, just to give us inspiration of what can be done. First off, I want to tell you, the way he was machshav his wife was the biggest lesson in Kiruv. It was the biggest lesson. When he started the Sunny Road Synagogue, every Shabbos he would get up there to speak. And hundreds of these young, thirsty South Africans would be listening to their young, charismatic rabbi. And he would get up there, and his wife told me he never once forgot to mention her in his speech. Never once. He would always say, and my wife, the light of my life, the one who teaches me what is good and true, Yocheved, who's sitting here, told me this amazing idea, amazing story, and I want to share it with you. And she would sit there basking in the glow and recognition that he showed her, saying, you know, you are part of me. You are part of what I'm trying to build. And that's Kiruv. And that's Kiruv. There was a man who came to the Shiva, and I said, how did you know Gav? He said, oh, I only met him for 5 minutes, but it changed my life. I said, okay, story time. What happened? I had begun writing down these stories because some of them were so fantastical, like you couldn't believe what you were hearing. This guy said, I met him for 5 minutes. What's the story? He said, well, I was sitting on an Egged bus in Eretz Yisrael, minding my own business, when this young man hops on the bus. The empty seat was right next to me. So he sits down and he says, Shalom Aleichem. I say, Aleichem Shalom, like that's very friendly. Shalom Aleichem. He says, what's your name? So I tell him my name, and he begins to speak with me. After about 3 minutes, he said to me, I have a question. He says, my name is Rabbi Klatzko. Then he says, I got a question for you. He says, sure, what is it? He says, what are you doing for the Jewish people? He said, excuse me? He said, look at you. You're well-spoken, you're good-looking, you're charismatic, you're knowledgeable. We need people like you. What are you doing for the Jewish people? He said, I didn't even know how to begin to answer that question. And then a moment later, it was his stop. He said, oh, have a great day. And he bounces off the bus. And I'm there, sitting alone with this question rattling in my head all day. What am I doing for the Jewish people? So the next day, I signed up for Arachim. And today, I'm one of the lecturers for Arachim. I go around the country teaching Yiddishkeit, all because of a 5-minute encounter with a person who couldn't keep his mouth quiet. Because he said, what are you doing for the Jewish people? A person came to Gabriel's house, and he saw the garage. They went to the garage was full of dishes. And when I say full of dishes, I mean boxes piled 10 high, 8 deep. You're talking about 80 sets of dishes. So he says to Gabriel, he says, whoa, were they having a sale on dishes? Gabriel says, yeah, they were. He said, so you had to, what did you buy, every dish in the store? Yes. He said, why? You're never going to use that? Because no, you don't understand. Sometimes I meet people, and they're in the middle of trying to become frum, and they want to start keeping kosher, but what's stopping them is they can't afford new dishes. So when I hear someone is becoming frum, wants to keep kosher, I got dishes to give them. So he bought all the dishes, and I can give them dishes. It's the way he thought. The way he thought. Rabbi Becher once came to visit him in South Africa. Rabbi Becher. And he's visiting him, and in the middle of the visit, Rabbi Gav says, why don't we go, you have time till you're speaking this evening, let's go to Kruger National Park. Let's go to a park, and we'll enjoy our time together. Gabriel used to do this to visiting Rabbanim. He used to give them, a little bit of an interesting time. He used to say, come, chill out a little, I'll give you a good time. So he said to Rabbi Becher, why don't you come? So they went to Kruger National Park, and they're walking along the park, and it's also a safari, by the way. So they go to Kruger National Park, and they see these 2 Afrikaners sitting on a big rock. Now, you know what an Afrikaner is? Afrikaner are the people kept apart that are going for so long. They don't like blacks, they don't like Jews, and they can be pretty scary. So Gav says to Rabbi Becher, hey, why don't we go over to them? Maybe one of them is Jewish. So Rabbi Becher says, no, bad idea. They will kill us. Gav says, no, you never know, let's go over. So Gav marches over. Rabbi Becher's hiding behind him because he doesn't want to go even near to this, but he doesn't want to leave Gabriel by himself. And Gabriel goes over to them and says, hi, you guys. Are either of you guys Jewish? And they both look up at him. They look like skinheads. They're scary-looking guys. And Rabbi Becher's like, oh, let's get out of here. Either of you guys Jewish? They both stare at him for a few moments, and then one of them says, well, technically I'm Jewish. His friend was shocked, actually. He says, you are? He said, well, technically. You see, because my mother's mother was Jewish, so technically that makes me Jewish. So God gets all excited. He says, oh, so do you do anything Jewish? He says, no, nothing at all. No Shabbos, no Yom Kippur, no Hanukkah, no Pesach, no. God looks at him sort of surprised. He says, I never met a Jew who didn't do a single thing Jewish. Wow. So the guy says, well, to be honest, there's one thing I do. He said, what do you do? He said, when the Intifada began, since technically I'm Jewish, so I began getting a little bit curious about Israel. And I was curious. I began to Google, of course. And as I'm Googling, I end up finding a site, which is sort of an Ask the Rabbi site. And for about a half a year, I've been having these questions about Judaism. And I've actually been learning quite a bit. So Rabbi Becker walks around and says to the guy, would you be Jonathan? The guy says, are you Mordechai Becker? He says, yes. From across the globe, they were pen pals. Because when you reach out, you have the ability to change the world. When you're silent, nothing happens. Now I'm getting this signal to end, and I really want to tell you more Maisalach. I think they're kedai to hear. But I think the initiative that we spoke about was even more kedai. So, let's see, are we over? Yeah, I think we're over. So if you can, hand it back. If you have any good ideas about this idea, come tell me. We have the ability to change the world. It's just up to us. Thank you very much.